Good morning, everybody. It's fairly early on a Sunday morning, on a rather wintry, rainy Sunday morning, so somewhat depressing almost looking outside the window. I've been wanting to make this video for the best part of 2 months now. I wanted to celebrate, in a way, through this diary, I suppose I should call it success to a degree, of reaching my 52nd week without alcohol. I'm actually making this video 2 months later, so it's more like my 60th week. And the reason for the delay is simply that we've had some not such great news within our family, and that's taken some time to come to terms with and deal with. So I'm making this video a little bit later. The purpose of the video really was to let people know what I experienced, how I found things, and I think what I'd like to do is quickly go back to the start, as to the why, if you like, and the how. And my background, I know I've talked about this in other videos. My background is such that I've been drinking since I was probably about 17, 18, something like that. I'm now 59 now. And from my recollection, my level of alcohol intake increased over the decades. And towards, 60 weeks ago, I was regularly drinking every night, 4 to 6 pints, I would say. Some at the weekend, sometimes more. I was never drunk. I was never hungover. I was never getting into trouble. I was never not turning up for work or drinking and driving or anything along those lines. I was, I think, like many people, a completely functioning individual who liked to drink, and I really did like a drink. I enjoyed everything that went with it. But equally, I started to think myself that I felt that alcohol was controlling me a bit too much. I was also getting some pressures, if I can call it like that, from closer family members. Not so much about, I guess, yes, about, I remember my daughter was living at home with us for a little bit, and she could sort of hear me every time I went to the fridge and opened a can of beer. She would text me saying, "Do you really need that one?" Or "Go to the garage, you really need that one." There was also some really good friends of mine, this is a few years ago now, that just sort of encouraged me. And it was all these little bits that built up, I think, in a way to a crescendo, to a point. But probably I think the biggest thing that changed was I was trying to reduce my daily alcohol limit down to 2 pints a night. My wife, my daughter at the time, as I say, was living here, and they were just trying to encourage me, which was good. And I was doing that. I'd been doing it about a few weeks, and unfortunately, one night I think it was a Thursday evening, I was on my third pint. I was sitting in the kitchen. My wife came in. She could see it was my third drink. Gave me a mouthful, can't even tell you what she said, and stormed off to bed. And I remember at that moment, the shame, the embarrassment, the feeling of letting her down and others was so strong in me. I didn't want to go to bed. This is quite late now. I didn't want to go to bed. I didn't want to face her. And I didn't. I laid on the sofa, wide awake, didn't fall asleep, and then went to bed. She was asleep. In the morning, we woke up, and it was as though nothing had happened. We just carried on. I was having a shower, she was talking, I was talking. But I knew in my mind something needed to shift. And whilst I wanted to have this shift, I also recognised that I was pretty fat. I was at the highest level I'd ever been. And alcohol, I thought, couldn't be part of this journey. So there was these two sort of reasons, really. One was weight loss, and two was my relationship with alcohol. And it was a Friday morning, and I remember standing in the shower thinking, starts tonight. I was going to make it Monday. I thought, no, it's got to start today. I, if I'm honest, did not believe I would follow that through. My first immediate thought was, oh my gosh, it's Friday. That's a night I always watch, have a few beers and watch rugby. Not as if I don't always do that. Sorry, the lights changed because my computer's decided to go off. Right, there we go. So I decided, I thought at the time, that's interesting. I'll start tonight, not believing I would. My second thought was, God, it's the weekend. I normally have a few beers at the weekend. Am I going to get through it? Well, somehow I did get through it. And I got through the next week and the following weekend and so on and so forth. And then I got through social events. I got through Christmas. And here I am 60 weeks later, effectively drinking no alcohol. It's not that I haven't had none. I have had the odd slurp of a cocktail. I have had the odd gin and tonic. But it seems just a different relationship than it was before. Now, what have I learned out of that? What have I experienced? Well, I think the first thing that I noticed, or just two things I noticed, was my sleep. The first thing I noticed was my sleep improved. I started going to bed earlier, partially because I don't want the temptation of having a drink. But I started going to bed earlier, and I found that whilst it took me longer to go to sleep, I found my sleep was much deeper, much more fulfilling, much more refreshing. From my wife's perspective, I completely stopped snoring. So it benefited her as well. I didn't wake up dehydrated or desperate for a wee or anything like that. It was normal, I guess. The second thing I noticed was I started to lose weight. I lost in total in the last year about 3 stone. Still nowhere near enough. I still need to lose a lot more, which is, perhaps the subject matter of another video, but that's something else I've learned. I've also plateaued, by the way, completely plateaued at about 3 stone weight loss. So I now know alcohol probably put 3 stone on me. And I think the third thing I started to notice is, in a way, freedom. I know that prior, when I certainly was drinking, the thought of, for example, last week I went to the theatre with some friends we've known for years. They like a drink, we like a drink, but I say we, my wife isn't really a big drinker. I am, or was. So alcohol was always involved. And I probably wouldn't have wanted to go because I knew I was driving. I'm talking about I wouldn't have wanted to go historically because that meant I couldn't have a drink, couldn't enjoy it as much. Now, on this particular occasion, I did drive and I had a gin and tonic. Didn't have any more. Haven't had any more since. And that's 2 weeks ago, Thursday. But it was very pleasurable, very nice. But what I found is that, if you like, the noose around my neck, maybe a better expression, the ball and chain around my ankle has dissipated, gone. The restrictions that were imposed, or I felt were being imposed by wanting to drink alcohol, have completely gone. I drive a lot more. This Christmas, I know I'm going to be driving to my son's for Christmas and back. That would have made me probably not want to go this time 60 weeks ago, because I know I wouldn't have felt I was going to enjoy it. Now I'm not concerned at all. So there's been a significant shift in my relationship with alcohol, which has been a positive shift. I'm not a sort of ex-drinking evangelist that everybody should give up. I think that people should question how much they are drinking, but I think that most people should find what's right for them. Some people do need to quit completely, but I think a lot can moderate their drinking significantly. And an example with that would be, sort of a modern day example would be go and look at the documentaries and maybe the book that Adrian Charles has written, who's a very sort of average bloke really, that recognised his relationship with alcohol, maybe was askew, and investigated that and challenged it, and has taken some action to reduce his alcohol intake. And I think that's something that I suspect if most people who were like me actually looked at would realise that they've got some challenges as well. They're a bit more addicted and controlled by alcohol than they care to admit. I believe I was one of them. I don't think I'm there now. I don't think I'll ever go back to those days. Another thing I've experienced is that it's different if you're not drinking alcohol in an environment that does have alcohol. And I'd probably argue it isn't as much fun. You don't replace the white heat of being with a group of friends, for example, having a few beers and all the banter and all the laughter that goes with it, and silliness ultimately. You just don't replace that. But equally, being now on the other side of the sort of drinking fence and being the non-drinker, it's very interesting to watch people who drink and the progression from being completely normal, whilst perhaps in their first, I would say, couple of pints, couple of drinks. Most people are completely unchanged. But once they hit that third or fourth drink, you tend to notice a change. A bit more silliness comes about, perhaps a bit louder, inhibitions fall, etc. And that's the sort of white heat I'm talking about. And clearly as a non-drinker now, that's not something I experience, but it's interesting watching people. I haven't been in a situation where people have got so drunk they can't, walk, or, they're throwing up or anything like that. But I have seen changes in people. And I guess at that point, in a sense, after the first maybe, third or fourth drink, you become more disconnected as the person that is sober to the person that is slowly getting more intoxicated. But the first couple, really, there's no difference. Excuse me. So I think in essence, for me, it's giving up alcohol has probably been the best thing I've done for many years. It's also fed into this belief system. What I mean by that is I never believed I would follow through. I've had a history of not following through on so many things. And here I am following through on quite an important health benefit. And that has given me strength to recognise I can follow through on other things that are of interest to me. There's no reason why I can't do them. I mean, for example, yesterday, my two children and their partners, I was going to say they've recently got into running. They've particularly their partners have been involved in running for years, and one of them is actually quite a good runner. But they go to do a lot of sort of Saturday morning park runs, and they have been around where I live. Park runs and walks, I should say, 5K. I suppose over the last year or so, they've encouraged us. We haven't gone. And yesterday was our second park walk, I should say, not run. So it's, you start at 9 a.m. It was absolutely horrendous weather yesterday. It was lashing it down. We had to run on grass, not tarmac. So it was slippy, muddy, wet, just unpleasant. And we did it. And the sense of that wouldn't have happened. Wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have followed through a year ago. So I think there are much wider changes and benefits you get once you give up a bit of alcohol. I'm not saying you've got to give it up completely. I just think you've got to moderate it, or give it up depending on your circumstances. For me, I think it's moderation, but it's pretty infrequent. I mean, just to give you a feel, as I said, I had a gin and tonic 2 weeks ago on Thursday. Prior to that, I think I had half a glass of wine with my wife whilst having a meal at home, which was lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I didn't need that next one. or want. I had a couple of beers after that were non-alcoholic, which has been the mainstay of my beer drinking experience. So if in any way you are sober curious or thinking, and you can get any sort of strength from this video or inquisition, there's loads of free information out on YouTube, some really good stuff. Go and listen to some people. Watch Adrian Charles' documentary. I think it was made about 3 years ago. There's lots of great books out there. A lot of it's free content. You don't need to pay. Check it out. See what happens, and maybe just put the drink down. We'll speak soon.